I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. I'm going to call this blog, What is Your Game Plan? And I've been wanting to do this one for a while. If you've watched some of the comments on my YouTube channel here over the years and some of the emails I get from people, you know, it's a reoccurring theme here, of course. You're always going to get the doom and gloomers that are out there, and you know, they seem to think that I'm pumping the tires on real estate and what makes you think that the stock market's going to go up forever, which I've always said it's not. There's always going to be corrections along the way, just like there is with Vancouver real estate. I think if you've been a long-term viewer of my blog here, you know that. I paint both pictures. I've been in this for a long time. And market corrections are quite normal. You can't expect to buy a house today and it goes up forever nonstop. There's always going to be dips and corrections along the way, just like there is with stocks, just like I talked about. Corrections are normal. 50% of all the stocks in real estate that I've owned, and that's a lot, has been pretty much 50% has been worth less than what I paid for them at some time. Usually it's early, it's in the first few years, and then, you know, it's off to the races after that. You got to get comfortable with that. But what is the game plan? You know, oftentimes these guys, and I know I'm probably wasting a lot of my breath on this stuff because I think a lot of these people just can't be reached. Actually, I know they can't. They've got their blinders on, they're mad, they're frustrated, and I can understand it. Many of them have been kind of left behind, both in real estate and with the economy. They're having trouble making ends meet. I've often said, you know, it's tough out there, especially if you want to live in a city as expensive as Vancouver, but it can be done, but it's going to be up to you. You've got to make the choice on it. And complaining and pointing the finger at all the problems and just saying the market's going to crash isn't going to do you any good. It's making the problem worse. But, you know, oftentimes people will say, you know, oh, and you're still pumping so bullish long-term on Vancouver real estate, which I am. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I've done blogs on it in the past. Unless something drastic happened to this city, which made it much less desirable than it is today, then I might change my mind. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And as I've always said, if you have an 8 to 10 year holding period or longer, which you should always have, you're going to do fantastic. But they'll often say, oh, it's overpriced, we're due for a crash, it's happening now, the market's down, whatever. Stock market's way overheated, you know, global, the interest rates are what's propping it up, whatever. But, you know, when I question some of them on this, I'll ask them, what is your game plan? So when a guy says to me, hey, the market's crashed, it's going to crash, I'm waiting, and I'll buy in later or whatever, I'll usually ask them politely, what is your game plan? What is your situation? Because I need to know a little more information. I'm curious. I want to know. Maybe I can learn something from you. So are you currently living at home, or are you paying $2,200 a month for a one-bedroom condo? Do you have your $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 down payment in place? Are you pre-approved for a mortgage? But almost every time they go quiet, these guys. And it's pretty typical because I think most of these guys don't have two dimes to rub together. They're just angry, they're frustrated. I can understand it. But they never want to put anything into context. They never really want to give any information. And I don't know why, because it's totally anonymous on YouTube. We don't know who you are. But, you know, what is the game plan here? You know, if you think Vancouver real estate is due for this correction, this big crash that we've been predicting for 30 years now, as long as I've been in the business, there's always this big crash just around the corner, yet the prices kind of continue to go up. We always get these run-of-the-mill corrections that I've often talked about. They're normal, just like they are in the stock market. You got to get comfortable with them. Hold it for long periods of time, and that'll solve all your problems, which I've always told you. But what is the game plan here? I mean, because without a roadmap in life, if you're just going to complain, you're just going to make things worse. I mean, I started a roadmap and started a plan when I was in my early 20s to save 15 or 20% of what I earn, to get better in my job and start moving up the pay scale, to start investing my money in products, either real estate or dividend-paying stocks, that are not only going to increase in value over time in capital gains, but even better, are going to pay me to hold them. That's where the real magic happens, in the form of rent checks or dividends from the companies I own. But what is your game plan? If this is a call to action for some of you guys that think the market's going to crash, both the stock market and the real estate market, what's your game plan here? Do you have the money in place? Are you currently renting and paying $2,200 a month, or do you live at home? I'd like to know. Because if you really step back from it and watch my blogs over the last 7 or 8 years and read my book, you've got to have some things in place. A, you better set a strike price. If you're going to wait for a better time, then you better be able to set a price and then purchase. If you don't, you're never going to pull the trigger, because pulling the trigger in a market that's going down, you'll never hit that magic point. You'll think, if I wait another month, it'll be down another 1%. You've also got to put a time limit on it, because there's a cost to waiting and being on the sideline. Some people have been on the sidelines for 5 or 6 years. I know of even realtors that sold their property 5 or 6 years ago, thought they'd get cute, thought they knew more than everybody else. I'm going to sell my condo and then buy back in after the market crashes. Well, that was 5 or 6 years ago, and market's gone up 80 or 90% since then. They've priced themselves. The market has passed them now. Even if we do get a 5 or 10 or 15% correction, they're still down 60%. So you got to set a time frame on that as well. But I'd really like to know, what the game plan is for some of these people. So I'll tell you my game plan. If you read my book, here's my game plan that's worked quite well for me. I've, again, systematically put money aside into assets that will pay me to hold them and kept them for long periods of time. The goal for me, which I hit basically back around 5 years ago, was that magical crossover point. It took me 20 years to get there, if you read my book, where the assets that I hold, my real estate portfolio and my stock portfolio, the income that those two sources are generating for me passively is more than enough for me to live comfortably and keep the current lifestyle I have. It's a nice situation to have, where you're earning well into 6 figures without having to lift a finger. So this is in the form of rental checks from my tenants, and many of my properties are clear title, and the dividends, the growing dividend stream that I get from the stock portfolio I hold. That should be your goal. That's my game plan. I started that in my 20s. By the time I got into my mid-40s, the goal was achieved. Now I continue to work because I enjoy it. But you need a game plan like this. Sitting on the sidelines and complaining and waiting for some magical time to buy in, either that be a share in Apple or your first condo. You got to set a time frame and a strike price. And a lot of people, I think, I'm just probably wasting my breath here. I don't think they have any of these things going anyways. They don't have 2 dimes to rub together. They can't get qualified for a mortgage. But for the few maybe that are, and really are trying to time the market, then I'd sure like to know what your plan is here. When are you going to buy in? When's the right time? Because as I've often said here, there is never going to be a magical time when it's green lights everywhere, everything is, a light shines down on you, no worries in the world, the market's going to go up forever from here if you buy. It's never going to happen, ever. As I've said in some of my later blogs, you have to get comfortable with having some short-term losses. That's how you make money. That's how the rich get rich. But remember, they're just paper losses. They're not realized unless you panic and sell. You have to understand this. This is so basic. If you can't, you're doomed for failure. You'll never be able to pull the trigger. You'll never be able to get enough money to comfortably retire or live the kind of lifestyle I live, or whatever you want to set your goals at. Retire early. You don't have to retire with 300 grand a year coming in income. If your goal is 50,000, great. Start planning the roadmap to achieve that. I talk about it in my book. I mean, if you really want to have a magical retirement and no worries at all, you try and create a portfolio of real estate and stocks that will passively provide income for you. So you never have to sell those assets unless you choose. It's not easy to do, but if you start at a young enough age, you can do it. And that's when life really gets good. And then, hey, later on when you get into your 70s, if you want to sell one of your condos for $750 or whatever, then go ahead. But the real magic happens when you're just living off the income that your portfolio is producing. You'll never have to worry about running out of money that way. And that's the nice thing about dividend-paying stocks. All the companies I hold, not only do they pay me a nice dividend, but they increase that dividend every year. Inflation's running at 2.5% or 3%. My average dividend increase right now is running double digits. So it's indexed threefold against inflation. That's how you never have to worry in retirement, never lose sleep about running out of money. If you start early and stick to the program, buy these assets, hold them, and keep reinvesting, you can get there like I did as well. But the complaining and waiting on the sideline for some magical time is never going to happen for you. I can tell you, I've been in this business long enough. I could tell you stories about people back 10 years ago coming through my open houses, the same gaggle of people. And market's overpriced. I'm just looking, waiting for that correction. This would go on for years. I'd see these guys. Market continued to go up. Get these little slowdowns here and there, and then they just disappear. Never pull the trigger. They're still renting someplace, and now the market's up 150%, and they're still on the sidelines, and we'll never get in now. Too late. So you got to have a game plan. Complaining and waiting for some magical time to get into the market is never going to happen, I can tell you. You got to be comfortable with pulling the trigger, and hey, if the market goes down 5% next year, it shouldn't matter to you. You've got a long-term need. Your retirement and your shelter are 30, 40, 50-year needs here. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next.